Hi, everybody. My topic is Jewish religious Orthodox teens at risk that go off the D, which is going off the Derech. They leave the fold. They leave the religion. Many times it comes along with leaving the community as well, leaving their family, their friends, and their environment, and etc. Before I went ahead and started doing my interviews and speaking with people. Um, I thought that the sole reason people leave the fold and go off the D is due to the secular world's temptation. So they can't resist and whatever the secular world has to offer. So the Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community, that is very restricted, is very limited, uh, has limited access to the outside world and to a lot of things. A lot of things out there are forbidden, including including having girlfriends, watching TV, um, having access to to all the movies, going to movies, all of that. So I always thought that the reason why these teenagers go off is because they can't withstand the temptation, so to speak. What I learned of all the interviews is that I was wrong. That this is not the reason. This is only the outcome, but the underlying reason why they leave is not because of the temptations. So I interviewed three people. One, a survivor, so to speak, somebody who was off the D, came back. The second person I interviewed was a social worker, his perspective. And the third person I interviewed is an educator in a school, an yeshiva that is for off the derech teenagers, basically from ninth through 12th grade. He teaches, I believe, 11th grade, but it's all one family, so to speak. They're not really restricted or limited to their students. It's like a one happy family. All the educators are involved with, mostly with all of the kids. So let me start off with the first interview was with the survivor, and I asked him what caused him to go off the D, um, to leave the fold, and at what age. So he told me that the reason he went off the D was due to questions he had. He had a couple of questions about the religion, that he found that he didn't get answers that were satisfactory. Now, in addition, he also told me that not only didn't he get answers that were sufficient, but the questions that he asked were frowned upon, and he was criticized for even questioning the religion, questioning his upbringing, and questioning the Torah. Um, he said he said he doesn't remember exactly at which age he started having questions, but he knows that the first time he took action was at the age of 12. So I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years before prior to that he had these questions. Interesting thing is that he told me he started off with desecrating the Sabbath with just by carrying a tissue in his pocket in the public domain, which carrying is forbidden on Sabbath. And he went ahead and he said he had this tissue in his pocket, and he says, it's only a tissue. Let's see if anything will happen. It's not that big of a deal. And from there, from there it went from one thing to the next. He was not from for many years. I asked him what had caused him to come back, and he mentioned to me that it's not like he doesn't have these questions. He still has these questions, but at one point he felt, for with at one point he said, I understood and I felt that the Orthodox religious way is the correct way to live, and he decided that that's how he's going to lead his life. And he said he had that feeling, although he had questions, but he was certain about this. And he said, literally from one day to the next, he made that decision. He gave up everything, his girlfriend and his whole secular lifestyle, and just came back, which I found was again an eye opener to me, that somebody would leave everything behind because of questions. Especially, it's not like an adult, that is very intellectual at a certain point, and says, this doesn't make sense. Was a child, a teenager, his questions bothered him that much, and he didn't have blind faith, so to speak. He just went out and acted upon his questions. The second person I interviewed was a social worker. From her perspective, was all about the attachment, the family, how much support, how much moral support, emotional support a teenager is given at home or in the school, like how much love, how much they validate his feelings and his emotions, all about that. And she claimed that that'll keep a person to stick to his upbringing and to his religious Orthodox upbringing. It's not about questions. It's not about temptations of the secular world, etc. The third person, which is the educator, I asked him, and he a very interesting thing that he told me was, actually he was the most informative, because he wasn't just from a single perspective. He has 50 kids in his school currently, and he's been an educator for about 8 years. So he has probably seen another 50 to 100 kids throughout his career. He told me that he claims there is no one common reason why somebody would go off the D. You can't say. He says it's not about questions. The wording he used was, nobody ever went off because of questions, and nobody ever came on because of answers. It's the questions are just a way to just to make somebody, just to pacify the guilty conscience one has when he goes off. And they're really looking for excuses, and not they're not looking for real answers. That was his perspective. That was his take on the thing. Interesting. He told me that he has kids from stable homes. Also, he said, when I asked him about the attachment thing, he said it has nothing to do with that either, because he said so many of the kids that are in the school come from stable homes, from great families. He knows the parents on a personal level, and he knows the homes they lead, and everything else. Obviously, you can't know everything, but he says, from being exposed to so many of such kids, he cannot say that it's only kids from broken homes, it's only kids from dysfunctional homes. They're only kids from a home that that is too strict or too soft or too liberal. all of that, he says, that's not the reason. He disagreed with me that it's not about the secular world tempting the individuals either. So when I asked him what he attributes it, what does he attribute teens going off, he told me that it can be everything and anything. As little as being, as small, I should say, as not being successful in a social circle, in social, in social status, not being successful academically, having to struggle with a certain developmental issue. Could be a having to struggle with an emotional issue. Nothing, nothing per se that he can say, that he can point to and say that this is why kids go off the teen. This is why teens go off the derech. It's every child has his story. Interesting point that he did bring out was that it's not just about the religion that they abandon. It's not about it's not about the religion, I should say, they abandon. It's everything the minute they face a struggle, the minute they face an obstacle on any level, emotional, social, academic, whatever level, it's always going to be the kid that says, I'd rather not go through this. I'd rather just throw everything away and take the easy way out. Now, when they do that, it's not just about the religion they throw away. They throw away everything they've been taught to value and to respect. For instance, he says they would be going skiing on a mountain, and that he would be waking them up in the morning to go down the slopes, not to pray, nothing, not waking them up for anything religious. And he says they would just not come out of bed. They just throw everything away, everything they viewed as normalcy, everything they viewed as functional. The whole deck of cards falls apart, and is nothing they live for, and there's nothing they respect, and there's nothing nothing has meaning in their life. So that basically sums it up. I hope you enjoyed.